what exactly was the third eye that was visible within the film on Doctor Strange's forehead? At first, we will discuss the MCU version of this ocular anomaly along with our theories on why it exists, and then we'll discuss the comic book version of the third eye. The third eye of Doctor Strange was first shown in the trailers, but during the film we see it being used by a corrupted version of Strange, who had destroyed an entire reality by causing a mental incursion. We will have a legal figure describing incursions as they exist within the comics and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but for now just know that they are absolutely capable of ruining your weekend. This version of Strange became corrupted by the Darkhold, and while using it, a third eye manifested itself on Strange's forehead. Why? Well, it's not quite clear. It seems to be indicative within the Marvel Cinematic Universe of Stephen's capacity to use dark and forbidden magics. We know that there are a number of texts that are reserved only for the Sorcerer Supreme, who include books allowing the Ancient One to channel the dark dimension through herself or himself, and we do it. Dr. Stephen Strange is the Sorcerer Supreme, or will be at least meant to be the greatest in the history of the Masters of Mystic Arts, who's tasked with protecting the realm from magical medicine to spread reality. Having only been a master of the mystic arts for a handful of years, Doctor Strange's meteoric rise to become the pinnacle of what all sorcerers aspire to be has been remarkable, and shows us that his otherworldly power has yet to even approach. In this video, I will be breaking down Doctor Strange's incredible abilities to determine just how powerful the future is, and just as a side note, I will not be discussing the alternate versions of Doctor Strange that we saw during the film, which gives us a glimpse of the potential for those who come to Strange. That is an entire video in and of itself, which I'll link to that later. Additionally, this video is about the Marvel Cinematic Universe character, not the comic book character, so I really don't care about any comic book feats that the character may have when I'm talking about a completely different version. If you're a fan of these power scaling videos, please consider subscribing and also follow me on Twitter. I'd like to warn you that this video does contain spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home. But before I continue, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Bosley. Millions of men have come to Bosley for the answers to their hair loss and hair restoration questions. If you're not a master of the mystic arts, you can't cast a spell to grow your hair back. It turns out that it's a lot easier to keep the hair you have than it is to get it back after it's gone. And today, Bosley RX, Bosley's simple and convenient way to restore, regrow, and retain hair. Hair loss starts earlier than you think. 25% begin the process before age 21, and 2/3 of men experience hair loss by age 45. Bosley RX can help you stop hair loss dead in its tracks with effective, FDA-approved treatment options from the trusted leaders in hair restoration. Get proven prescription-only medication and specially formulated topicals straight to the door. It's simple. Complete an easy online survey and a physician will evaluate your submission, and upon approval, your treatment will be delivered directly to you. No doctor's office visit required. It's fast, easy, and discreet. Start keeping what's yours. Learn how you can help stop hair loss by going to bosley.com/keyissues or use the link below to learn how you can get your first month free with free shipping. Again, that's bosley.com/keyissues to learn how you can get your first month free with free shipping. Now, Dr. Stephen Strange is a brilliant mind who, even before becoming a master of the mystic arts, was on the radar of Hydra, who planned to have him murdered as Dolan's algorithm considered him a potential threat to the culture group. Having been spared this horrible fate by Captain America, Sam Wilson, and S.H.I.E.L.D., Strange went on in blissful ignorance until one day when he was in a car accident which cost him the ability to job as a surgeon. Wanting to restore his health at any cost, he went on a journey to seek out Commerce Oz and his life with Jonathan Pangborn, and what he found was incredible. Under the tutelage of the Ancient One, Dr. Strange used his incredible talent, along with his eidetic memory, to rise up the ranks of the Masters of the Mystic Arts, and was instrumental in the defeat of the Zealot Caecilius and his master, Muhammad. But just how powerful is Dr. Strange?
Well, in Infinity War, we see Strange go toe-to-toe with the mad Titan Thanos, being able to not only match his impressive physical strength, but push him to the limits, forcing Thanos to use multiple Infinity Stones in combinations he would not have to use against any other foe during his quest to decimate half of all sentient life. Using these stones under the range of Sidorak, he is able to grab onto and restrain Thanos long enough for his backup to jump in. And after Thanos' escape from Mantis' mind manipulation, Strange is forced to battle Thanos mano-a-mano, and during this fight, Strange casts the Images of Icon spell, and again is able to restrain Thanos, forcing the Mad Titan to use the Soul Stone in concert with the Power Stone to locate Strange's real body and destroy the duplicate. And while Thanos was holding back for the majority of Infinity War, confirmed multiple times by both writers and directors, he was going all out against Strange because he had to. As the Russos state, it's Thanos' full power versus Doctor Strange's full power. But how impressive is this feat of matching Thanos' strength? Well, Thanos is easily able to overpower and bloody up the Incredible Hulk as well as the mighty Thor, two of the most powerful Avengers, at least physically. Even during Endgame, a younger Thanos bullies the most powerful version of Thor, as stated by the directors, the Russo brothers. And Thor is incredibly durable, as he was able to endure the quote-unquote full force of the star, according to Petrie. However, this unfortunately doesn't make him star level. As I've mentioned in multiple other MCU power scaling videos, the act of creating or destroying a star is not the same as the amount of energy that star can output at any given time. In fact, the amount of energy isn't anywhere close to star level. The total amount of energy that Thor was enduring per second is roughly 855 gigatons of force, or roughly, in terms of power scaling, a large island level. Because Thor was tanking this amount of energy for so long, we tend to upgrade his durability slightly to at least small country level, meaning he can endure enough force to destroy a small country. Since Thanos was able to deal as much damage to Thor as the star was, we can scale Thanos' strength to the star, and bringing this full circle back to Doctor Strange, who was able to restrain Thanos, forcing him to use the Power Stone to escape. Obviously, Strange's Eldritch Blade in concert with the Images of Icon would be relative to Thanos' strength. And we already know that the Crimson Flame of Sidorak is a more powerful spell than just a simple Eldritch Whip, was able to restrain Thanos, preventing him from Infinity Bomb. So he doesn't need the duplicates to match Thanos' strength. And since we've already brought up the Power Stone, I'd like to go over this a little bit more. Of course, the Power Stone has the capability to destroy entire planets. In calculating the total observable destructive capabilities of the Power Stone, we are able to determine that it can output over 5 megatons of force. This number is so astronomical that it's hard to convey just how insane this is. For example, the most powerful nuclear bomb on record is the SAR bomb, able to put out 5 gigatons of force, which is roughly 1 quintillion times weaker than the Power Stone. That's 1 with 18 zeros behind it. And the Power Stone may be even more powerful than what we can currently calculate. As we know, celestial beings are some of the most powerful in the universe, each able to create planetary bodies. More specifically, stars, as their purpose is to create stars and spread light across the infinite expanding void. But Isan the Searcher felt the need to seek out the Power Stone to amplify his own power. Not to mention that the Power Stone's purpose in the Infinity Gauntlet is to amplify the power of the other stones, allowing them to destroy half of all sentient life in the universe and possibly tear down the universe to its atoms. And Thanos unleashing the full might of the Power Stone was not enough to get past Doctor Strange's greatest defense, the mirror dimension. And just to clarify, according to the official novelization of Infinity War, Thanos was indeed trapped within the mirror dimension after Strange summoned what seemed to be a portion of the mirror dimension walls. The mirror dimension was in actuality summoned all around Thanos, just like it was with Spider-Man during No Way Home and Caecilius during the events of Doctor Strange's solo film. Thanos was then forced to use the Power Stone with the Reality Stone to break through and return to his dimension. Quote, Strange cast a spell that encased Thanos in a crystal prison. Thanos smirked as he used the reality and power stones to break the prison into 1,000 shards. So the mirror dimension's barriers were strong enough to endure the planet-annihilating power of the Power Stone, and even if you go frame by frame, you can see that reality and Power Stones when breaking out of the mirror dimension. And Strange's spells could somewhat contend with the massive power of Thanos himself. As for speed, it's always the same as it always is within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and if you're familiar with the speed scaling from my other videos, you can skip ahead to the timestamp on the screen, but if you're not, I'll go over it once again. So we scale everyone off of Captain Marvel and Thanos to a scene reacting to Carol during Endgame. From there, you can literally scale every other major character within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as almost everyone has had a fight with someone who has fought Thanos. Captain Marvel, in her solo film, has shown reaction and combat speeds exceeding Mach 100, and during Endgame, she's able to fly down the planet, search it, and then return at extreme speed, reaching Mach 300 at a low end and over Mach 1,000 at a high end, which is over 750,000 miles per hour. Of course, in No Way Home, we have Electro as well, firing electricity at various characters who are all able to dodge it. Of course, we do see Strange reacting to Thanos in their final battle during the Infinity Saga, but there is some higher tier speed scaling, which is wildly inconsistent and surely not the intent of the filmmaker, but worth noting regardless. As we know, Doctor Strange visits the Dark Dimension to confront the Cosmic Conqueror, Dormammu. The Dark Dimension itself is beyond time, meaning that time does not exist there. So to move within the Dark Dimension, the speed formula to do so, as speed equals distance over time. In power scaling, we refer to this level of speed as immeasurable because the character's speed is impossible to measure. So using the scaling, Doctor Strange would be able to move and react faster than instantly. However, within the context of the film, we know Strange was meant to introduce the foreign concept of time to Dormammu, binding him to the laws of nature within Strange's universe. So using this context, as well as the hundreds of anti-feats within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I do not believe this scaling is worth considering when trying to determine the power of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So now that we've discussed the raw stats of Doctor Strange's spells as well as his speed, let's get into the feature Sorcerer Supreme's various attacks abilities when discussing his spells. Using Eldritch magic, Doctor Strange can manifest various weapons in the form of whips, swords, and shields, which he uses when he needs to fight up close and personal. These weapons can also be used as projectiles to attack, as seen during No Way Home, when he fires his shields at Spider-Man, turning them into deadly Eldritch discs. Or they can be used to assist allies, as when he uses them as platforms for Star-Lord to hop across. If a larger, more powerful shield is required, he can summon the Shield of the Seraphim, which he does to help soften the Avengers' crash landing on Titan. He has standard telekinetic abilities using magic as he displayed during Infinity War when he pushed back his banner to get into safety, and at various times during No Way Home to call back the mods and his sling ring. As I mentioned earlier, Strange can summon the Crimson Band of Sidorak, which he uses to restrain Thanos and prevent him from using the Infinity. Now I know there is a device also called the Crimson Band of Sidorak, but this spell is referred to as that as well by the visual effects team. The bands seem much more powerful than his standard Eldritch whips, but may be more difficult to summon. When he needs to go on the offensive, he can fire the bolts of Baltok, energy arcing projectiles which can melt solid stone on contact. He has access to various tracking spells, which he uses to locate Odin and to assist Spider-Man with tracking the multiversal invaders during No Way Home. Strange can also cast various protection and warding spells, which he used to prevent access to the Time Stone within the Eye of Agamotto. Additionally, he has access to elemental spells, one being the Winds of Watum, which he uses to clear the New York City streets and to hold back the water during the final battle against Thanos. He can summon fire and open the earth to summon the icy tendrils of Ixalan, which drag members of Thanos' army into the chasm that he created within the earth. Doctor Strange can duplicate himself using a spell called the Images of Icon, making copies that can interact with the physical world and aren't simply illusions like sprites duplicates. Transmutation is also on the list of spells Strange has access to. He's able to conjure a defensive barrier that transmuted a singularity into harmless butterflies. He can transmute his clothing from street clothes to his sorcerer robes, and he transmuted a cup of tea into a mug of beer for joy, and it even meant all empty. And speaking of conjuring, no good sorcerer could run without the ability to conjure items, as he does with the Time Stone during Infinity War, which he hid in an illusion of the stars. He also conjured an umbrella stand and Strange can additionally enchant and throw items, imbuing them with eldritch magic, as he does with Spider-Man's Iron Spider gauntlet, giving it the ability to track multiverse anomalies and allowing it to fire a projectile that instantly transports its target into a magical prison located within the Sanctum Sanctorum. Within the Sanctum, he has the ability to teleport himself and others instantly. However, we've never seen him do this outside of the Sanctum Sanctorum, so this might be out of his current realm of power to do elsewhere. During the events of No Way Home, Strange also displayed his high-level mind hack spells, able to brainwash the entire planet into forgetting Peter Parker ever existed. This is so absolute that it seemingly changed the events of the past decade, not only in the minds of everyone who knew Peter, but physically as well. He was wiped from the internet entirely, all of his conversations and texts with MJ or Ned, gone. Any image of him that would be seen by someone who knew him, deleted forever. Not only digital proof, but physical proof of his existence was wiped clean as well. Any physical photos or records tying him to Midtown High would have to have been erased. That shrine in his school, for one, would have to have been altered, if not outright. It wasn't just everyone forgetting who Peter was. It warped reality, and it made it as if he never existed to these people in the first place. Of course, all the events of Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame happened, but people don't remember ever meeting the person under Spider-Man's mask. They only ever remember meeting Spider-Man, not Peter. Strange, with this spell, literally changed the past, and the effects of this we will see in the Multiverse of Madness. Of course, this spell was very risky, and within the movie, the spell was altered mid-cast, which is very difficult to do, not to mention it was altered multiple times, which if left uncontrolled by Strange would have broken the barriers of reality, converging the multiverse. However, Strange was able to briefly contain that spell before being forced to unite the entire planet. Upon doing so, Strange was also able to magically seal the rifts in reality, closing the multiverse and sending the Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man, and their villains back to their home dimension. One of the best offensive options Strange has at his disposal is astral projection and the astral push. Strange can force his astral form out of his body and into the astral plane, which is an alternate dimension that is aligned with his own. While in this astral form, the physical limitations of his body are tossed aside, and he can move freely throughout the dimension without anything impeding him. But if need be, he can still interact with the physical world. This ability makes him extremely dangerous, as he could easily use his astral form to battle opponents without them ever being able to detect or interact with his spirit. Although there is a downside to this. If his astral form has been projected out, his body is left limp and lifeless until he returns to it. Not only this, but others who have mastered this ability can interact with the spirit as well. Not only can he project his own astral form, he can push the astral form out of others, which, without countermeasures, is pretty much a hit knockout. The Ancient One first displays this ability against Doctor Strange to help him get out of his stubborn mindset, and while out of his body, she was able to send his astral form to multiple dimensions outside of their own, which could be used offensively to remove a threat without control over their astral form. Simply push them out, send them to another dimension, and return. People may bring up how Spider-Man was able to effectively counter this with his spider sense distracting Strange long enough to infuse his body, but against most opponents he wouldn't be holding back against them, and it's an easy win condition. Even against Spider-Man, he didn't have to get the locks back, and if he wasn't close friends and colleagues with Spider-Man, he could have just put him in the mirror dimension and left with a sling ring, leaving Spider-Man trapped there forever. Of course, as I just mentioned, he's also equipped with a sling ring, which can open portals to anywhere in the world and even other dimensions. Sling rings can be used for travel or for combat, as shown by Wong and Doctor Strange during the events of Infinity War, No Way Home, and Shang-Chi. If Strange is ever found in a situation where he is still equipped for human threat, he can always use the sling ring to remove himself or his opponent from the battle, as Wong does to Obsidian. Or, like I mentioned, he can summon the mirror dimension and leave with the sling ring, trapping his target there for eternity. And the mirror dimension is similar to the astral plane, as it is a dimension aligned with Doctor Strange's own, but it mirrors that dimension. Strange has the ability to summon the mirror dimension around his opponent, which we mentioned earlier against Thanos. He does this as well against Caecilius to prevent the destruction of the Sanctum, and against Spider-Man to prevent Peter from fleeing. If simply trapping his opponent isn't the goal, he can also fight them within the mirror dimension, giving him a massive advantage. In this dimension, he has the ability to bend reality to his will. He can alter gravity or his surroundings at a whim, and can do so continuously without much effort. His complete mastery of this ability allows him to build cities, distort reality, and defy gravity. Strange is also equipped with a powerful magical relic called the Cloak of Levitation. Of course, the cloak allows him to levitate and fly, but it does so much more. It has a mind of its own and is really more of a sidekick than a piece of equipment. It can help him dodge attacks while on his blind spots. He can fight autonomously or save Strange if he's ever knocked unconscious. This makes the option of astral projecting to fight much more appealing, as Strange knows if he is out of his body, the cloak will keep him safe. And the cloak is a formidable opponent, able to fight other sorcerers, overpower Drax, and even briefly restrain the Mad Titan himself. You really couldn't ask for a better companion. But finally, before I leave you, I'd like to mention the Time Stone. Despite Strange no longer having it, the stone played an integral role in his power progression, and I'd be remiss not to mention it. With the Time Stone, Strange was able to accelerate his already impressive progress by manipulating time. He lived through thousands of moves against Dormammu, giving him precious time to practice his spellcasting, and he also lived through all 14,605 battles against Thanos, gaining invaluable time, further mastering the mystic arts, which is possibly how he learned to control the mirror dimension so thoroughly. When he had the Time Stone, Strange could stop and reverse time at will, give immunity to others that are in stopped time, and introduce time to a void where there was none, and he could even see into the future. With the Time Stone, Strange is obviously more powerful, but he's still one of the most powerful beings in the multiverse without it. So, to summarize, Doctor Strange's spells are powerful enough to contend with the Mad Titan Thanos, someone who could easily defeat both Hulk is on par with the reactions of Captain Marvel herself, and his versatility is nearly unmatched within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think we'll see Doctor Strange reach new power in his upcoming film, but even right now, he's insanely powerful and clearly in the upper echelon of power within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Let me know what you guys think of Doctor Strange down in the comments. Do you think I accurately represented how powerful the Sorcerer Supreme is, or do you think there is more to say? Of course, I left out the what-if character, Evil Strange, but we'll get to that in a separate video, as I mentioned earlier. Remember to like and subscribe. It does really help us out. Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, is a powerhouse within the Marvel Cinematic Universe and easily the strongest Avenger in terms of power, and you can even argue hacks abilities, although she does have some stiff competition in the latter. In this video, I will be detailing Wanda's incredible powers, and while I typically discuss strength, speed, durability, and hacks, as well as all other abilities and skills, in this video, I will be focusing primarily on Wanda's raw power and her hacks abilities, as she simply scales to Thanos, Thor, Captain America, Captain Marvel, Iron Man, etc. in speed, and her durability really isn't much to write home about, although the new sword Vision was trying to crack her skull open, and he didn't do it instantly, so I mean, there's that. I will mention some notable species at the end of the video, so keep that in mind. Also, this video does contain major spoilers for all of her Marvel Cinematic Universe appearances, including WandaVision. Additionally, this video will be covering the Marvel Cinematic Universe only, not comic book source material. And if you guys enjoy these videos, please be sure to comment, hit that like button, and subscribe. It lets us know that you guys want more of these videos, and it helps us get them out quicker. With that being said, let's begin. As we learned during the events of WandaVision, Wanda Maximoff has always been a witch, more specifically the Scarlet Witch who was foretold in the Darkhold. She was a witch who was not born but forged, and she had powers that she used subconsciously referred to as chaos magic, which she first demonstrated with the probability hex that she placed on the Stark missile that crashed into her family's apartment. Unlike the typical witches within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, such as Morgan Le Fay and Agatha Harkness, Wanda had no need to speak or weave hand signs to cast spells because she was the Scarlet Witch. After this traumatic experience as a child, she and her brother were radicalized, and they joined Hydra to become guinea pigs in their experiments with the Scepter. After being exposed to the Scepter, and more specifically the Mind Stone, Wanda's powers were amplified by the Golden Infinity Gem, and ever since then, Wanda has been one of the most powerful beings the Avengers have ever encountered. Using her psionic abilities, Wanda was able to tear apart Ultron's vibranium hull and shatter his heart. And if you aren't quite sure how durable vibranium is, remember Captain America's vibranium shield could completely no-sell strikes from Thor during Loki's insurrection, and Thor just setting his hammer down could shake mountains. Then remember that in Age of Ultron, it took the combined might of Vision, Thor, and Iron Man to begin to damage Ultron, not even destroy him completely. You could argue that the damage dealt to Ultron by these three and the Hulk weakened the metal enough to make it more pliable, but Ultron blocked most of their attack with his arms, and his faceplate is really the only noticeable damage done to the automatic robot. So in my opinion, this is a legit win for Wanda. The breastplate seems to be completely intact, so Wanda ripping it apart so casually is super impressive. If you have seen my videos on Thor, Black Panther, or Thanos, you know just how impressive this actually is, but for those who haven't, Thanos can output forces of over a teraton with his attacks, meaning Thanos' strikes are over 20,000 times more powerful than the world's most powerful nuclear bomb at a minimum. It took multiple strikes from Thanos, the most powerful villain the Avengers have ever faced, wielding an Uru blade to break apart Cap's vibranium shield, and Wanda just rips apart vibranium in her first appearance. While this is impressive, Wanda continues to become more and more powerful over the years as she trains the Avengers, and eventually becomes face-to-face with Thanos twice. The first time she battled the Mad Titan, he held 5 Infinity Stones, and she was able to delay him long enough to shatter the Mind Stone contained within his head. While according to multiple sources Thanos was holding back here, it's still impressive as it's clear he had to try somewhat to get through her attacks and required the Infinity Stones to block her assault. But once she returns in Endgame, there are no Infinity Stones to protect Thanos from her wrath. First, she takes out Thanos' weapon, a blade made of Uru. This is a feat we've only seen replicated once before by Hela, the goddess of death, who had nearly limitless power to draw from Asgard. After disarming Thanos, Scarlet Witch takes full advantage, lifting Thanos from the ground like Yoda with X-Wing. She then began peeling apart Thanos' armor while simultaneously crushing him with magic to the point where Thanos was forced to fire at his own army to free himself. And Thanos is just as durable as he is strong, able to take abuse from the Hulk, Bleeding Edge Iron Man, Mjolnir amped worthy Captain America, and Captain Marvel, and able to keep going. Kevin Feige outright says that Wanda was going to kill Thanos.
Well, I think it's interesting if you look at Endgame, Wanda Maximoff was going to kill Thanos.
And the Russo brothers state that she was the biggest threat to Thanos on the battlefield, which directly scales her above the heroes we just mentioned, plus some other heavy hitters such as Doctor Strange. And speaking of the Sorcerer Supreme, Agatha Harkness lets us know that Wanda's power does in fact exceed that of Doctor Strange. The Darkhold even holds a prophecy foretelling the destruction of the world by the Scarlet Witch, so in reality she likely has planet-busting potential. So just in terms of raw power, Wanda outscales pretty much everyone in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we haven't even talked about the hacks yet, so let's keep going. As an inexperienced child, Wanda unknowingly cast a probability hex on the Stark missile that threatened to kill her and her brother Pietro. But after having her powers unlocked, Wanda is more purposefully able to control the spells that she uses. Wanda primarily uses psionic powers in the form of energy blasts, force fields, really anything she can think of. She's used this power to cipher a dangerous gas out of a building, contain an explosion, strangle a large group of people, send out an energy pulse that vaporized a large group of Ultron bots, destroy the Mind Stone while simultaneously holding back Thanos, and even fly. Using this power, she can affect the world at a microcellular level. However, she rarely does this in combat. She also uses a variety of hexes to ensnare the mind of her opponents, as she does to the Avengers and also Agatha Harkness on multiple occasions, causing them to endure painful visions. But in the case of Hulk, she was able to enrage him beyond the point of Bruce Banner's influence, causing the Green Goliath to go berserk and begin a rampage. The effect of her mental manipulation doesn't just end after an encounter with her. As the Avengers, including the mighty Thor, were still seeing visions and hearing voices hours after their battle with the Witch. In the final stand against Ultron and his legion of robots, Wanda was able to control the minds of a large group of people, compelling them to get to safety. And of course, Wanda is able to mess with minds at a deeper level. During the Westview incident, she is able to suppress an individual's personality and replace it with another of her choosing, making an entire town of actors into a sitcom, and anyone that entered the Hex was just passively mind-hacked and reality warped by Wanda. After the Hex was taken down, she was also able to mind-hack Agatha Harkness, who had shown resistance to it prior. Not only can Wanda put others under her spell, she can release them from the control of others as well. During the Age of Ultron, Helen Cho was made into Ultron's thrall by the Mind Stone itself, but Wanda was able to undo that control pretty casually. Wanda's mental powers are not just limited to influencing others' minds. She can also speak telepathically and read their minds, as she does with Ultron as he is transferring consciousness to Vision with his body. After creating the Hex, Wanda begins to really flex her magical abilities. Of course, she completely rewrites reality, creating the town of Westview to her liking and maintaining these changes within the Hex passively. In a combat scenario, she is essentially a walking reality stone, able to bend the laws of physics to her will. Even after exiting the Hex, any rewritten object remains unchanged. But while in the Hex, not only can she transmute and transfigure, she can also create matter with her chaos magic, referred to as spontaneous creation. Interestingly, the Hex emits a radiation known as CMBR, which is closely associated with the remaining energy of the Big Bang, which likely came from her ability to create matter spontaneously, so these two events are likely intertwined. These spontaneous creations range from simple to extremely complex. Vision, for one, is an insanely complicated synthezoid created from a vibranium weave with a literal infinity stone implanted into his head to give him sentience. Not to mention her children, who have their own distinct personalities, appearance, and superpowers, which begs the question, can Wanda bestow superpowers? Well, it seems like she and other witches can. Vision has all of his powers, her kids have their own abilities, and Agatha was able to give Baby Pietro super speed. And just as a side note, Wanda was able to pretty easily react to these speedsters within her head. So if they scaled somebody's real brother, Wanda's speed has increased immensely after unleashing her chaos magic. Wanda can also teleport herself and others from place to place, something she learned while within the hex. And she also has the ability to manipulate the elements, as she creates a fire in one episode, causes an electrical power surge, and even causes it to rain after a heavy water break. Additionally, she has the ability to control time in the hex. She controls the day-night cycle to focus on her sitcom episode, and even turns time back when the hex is infiltrated by absurdity. She learned the protection spell after seeing it in Agatha's house, and was able to apply it on the fly during a battle to protect herself from Agatha's assault. Not only was she able to eventually prevent Agatha from casting spells, but she was able to absorb Agatha's attacks and then turn them back on her. Finally, after obtaining the Darkhold, Wanda learns how to perform astral projection, a spell first seen in Doctor Strange. However, Wanda is able to take it a step further as she can move around in her body while her astral runs out with something else, which is something the sorcerers have not been able to accomplish. How Wanda was able to learn this without any training is pretty powerful. As you learn in Agent's Shield, the Darkhold was created in the Dark Dimension from the Dark Force. It's referenced to as a book of sins containing infinite knowledge, which reveals knowledge that seeking, although corruption upon reading the book is common. Wanda wanted to learn more about herself, magic, and possibly a way to bring children back to life, which is alluded to when she heard children's voices. This is like pause, and the voice wanted to reveal the information to her. When seeing the book, Phil Coulson could also hear voices coming from the pages, so that's pretty consistent. And while this next part is comic book canon is not typical of material, it is specific. Excerpts from the Darkhold in the comics were copied down and written in strokes. If that remains true in the cinematic universe, then this all ties together very nicely, as the Darkhold was created in the Dark Dimension of the cinematic universe, and the Book of Cagliostro contained information to summon Dormammu and cycle his power via the ritual of Cagliostro during the Doctor Strange. And season 3 of Runaways, Morgan Le Fay with the knowledge within the Darkhold to try and merge the Dark Dimension with Earth, so it all sort of makes sense together. And I know there are those of you who are already furiously typing how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Runaways aren't canon. Well, in the description, I posted a massive Google Doc with mountains of evidence from in-universe, as well as quotes directly from Kevin Feige himself, stating that both series are canon to film, so feel free to browse that before you press enter. So now that Wanda has the Darkhold and books of infinite knowledge and possibly the origin for all the films contained within the Comic Con library or the Forbidden section, he has the potential to skyrocket even further beyond the power that we've seen thus far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But that's not all. Wanda is extremely skilled in real-world combat, having been trained by Black Widow and Captain America directly through the years. She's able to contend with the deadliest fighters in the MCU. Black Widow herself is stated to have unrivaled knowledge of martial arts. A decent chunk of that knowledge was passed on to Wanda during their years of training. Just to show you her skill level a bit more concretely, let's look at the skill of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. As detailed in our Thor video, Thor's skill in hand-to-hand combat is very underrated. Without his powers, he is able to make the most highly trained S.H.I.E.L.D. agents look like small cops. He embarrassed them so thoroughly that Coulson was convinced Thor had decades of high-level training for this feat. Flash forward to Endgame. Thor's immense skill is put to the test when he encounters the Mad Titan Thanos, who embarrasses Thor and handing him guilt. Thanos is stated to have been traveling the universe for a millennia, defeating the universe's best heroes. He's referred to as the Genghis Khan of the universe, meant to be unbeatable in 1v1 combat. And while he takes out Thor with relative ease, Captain America really puts Thanos through his paces until Cap is eventually bested by Thanos. Then, Scarlet Witch shows up, able to match Thanos in hand-to-hand combat, eventually getting the upper hand and using her superior power to tear him apart. And this is all pretty consistent. Wanda is able to go blow for blow with Proxima Midnight as well, who is stated to be one of the most formidable warriors in the cosmos, someone who could fight Black Widow and Captain America simultaneously, and later bullies Okoye and Black Widow during the Battle of Wakanda. While not being really applicable in a versus battle scenario, Scarlet Witch was also molded into a spy by Black Widow, able to go undercover in espionage missions, and was even taught how to drop her Sokovian accent to blend in more easily while undercover. So to summarize, Scarlet Witch outscales every other hero and villain in the MCU other than a few notable exceptions such as Dormammu. With her chaos magic, she has the potential to destroy Earth, but she also has a massive variety of hacks available to her, and this arsenal is only going to grow with more time spent studying the infinite Darkhold. She also has extremely fast reflexes, scaling to the top tier characters in the universe, and even casually reacting to speedsters within the Hex. Finally, being trained by Black Widow and Captain America, her skill seems to be outright unmatched in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we barely begun to scratch the surface of Wanda's reality-altering, Infinity Stone-shattering powers. And I can't wait to see if she is able to continue to grow alongside Doctor Strange, especially if he teaches her how to control magic, as he has over years of training in Kamar-Taj, as well as the various time loops he's been party to. And that's pretty much all I've got for you guys today in terms of how powerful the Scarlet Witch is. Let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed this video and who you would like to see a video on next. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. It does really help us out. And remember, the motto is Scarlet Witch over everything. And I'll see you guys next time. Hello everyone, this is Garrick from Key Issues, one half of Key Issues, and I am back here today to do an updated ranking of the tier list, the Marvel Cinematic Universe tier list. And the last time I did this was like 2 or 3 years ago, and obviously that list is now outdated. A lot of scaling has changed as new movies have come out, and even old scaling has altered somewhat based on new information that we found in guidebooks and other things like that. So today, I'm going to update the tier list to the best of my ability from top to bottom, and I'll do most of the Marvel Cinematic Universe canon. It's going to be most of the major characters, including some things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Humans, various things where maybe the canonization has been called into question somewhat. There's a larger tier list that I have that includes those characters, like the Dagger, the Runaways, etc. But we're going to focus on what we know 100% for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, is canon, even though I believe that stuff is still canon. We're not going to address it in this video. It's also not going to contain canon from Marvel What If. Obviously, there are a lot of very powerful characters in there that would scale above the other characters in the Sacred Timeline, but we're going to try and focus on the Sacred Timeline and characters that really have a set timeline. So, I'm going to be talking about other Spider-Men, villains from Spider-Man No Way Home and some other timelines as we direct this interact. Sacred timeline, at least in 2021. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness might change that. What if? And those characters may end up interacting, scaling to characters within the sacred timeline. But for now, we're going to focus on live action within the sacred timeline. Now, I'm going to do my best to explain all the placements within the tier list, but I can't go into excruciating detail on every single character, otherwise forever. I know this preamble is taking quite a bit of time, but I need to go over this because there are going to be a lot of bad feedback and comments and try and misconstrue what I'm saying here. This tier list has been a long time coming. Obviously, I've been power scaling the Marvel Cinematic Universe for literal years, watching as many interviews, directors' commentaries, reading Marvel guidebooks, getting opinions from people that disagree with me, trying to get outside of what you may consider an echo chamber, and getting a lot of opinions from people outside of my immediate circle. And to that end, I've invited two people who have helped me assemble this tier list. Now, these aren't the only two people that have helped me, as I just said, but they are two people that are heavily involved in the tier list. So, I mean, I would say the tier list is as much theirs as it is mine, and that, they deserve as much credit for the assembling of this tier list as I do. First is Crisis. You may know he's been on multiple videos here on this channel. He's an editor for this channel, as well as Seth the Programmer. He's assisted with videos on that channel as well. So, Crisis, say hi to everyone.
Hey everybody, I'm ready to get into it. Grab the popcorn because we're in for the long haul.
And I also have the Chadwick here, who is also a friend of the channel. He's a moderator on my Discord who went ahead and went all the power scaling all the things he's a friend of mine as is Crisis. If you want to check out the Chadwick's channel, I've done a collaboration over there talking about Resident Evil scaling, which is a lot of fun. But Chad, so with all of that being said, I would like to put one more disclaimer out there that there you may hear some background noise. I'm on a pretty busy street, and when you hear my recorded videos, obviously not the cars going by. I think the car goes by maybe a lot more than I can record a line, so my videos are horrible, but it's going to be a long-form live stream, and you may hear some background noise. And all of these tiers, we have, specific names for them, but they don't necessarily mean all that much. Going from top with True God, Universal, Celestial, Avenger, Hydra God, Master God, Hydra Avenger, Dragon Avenger, God, Spider-Man Tier, Soldier God, Soldier, Hawkeye Tier, Super Soldier, Super Soldier, Martial Arts Master, Hero Marla, High Tier Shield Agent, Tier 5, Shield Agent, Justice, and Hard to Scale. Hard to Scale tier will be specifically for characters that have maybe a lot of contradictions, or it's a little bit muddy, or maybe we don't have enough information at this time to properly place them on the tier list. So there's going to be several people that are going to go into Hard to Scale. For the most part, it would just be better to mark them off as, again, not going to be any sort of So that being said, all of that out of the way, we're like 5-6 minutes into the live stream already. Let's go ahead and hop into it. Like I said, this is going to be live off the top of my head, and all all of this, obviously not important. My best to remember everything. There's a ton of characters. If I get into my chat, operating in the chat and comments is a good thing. I'm not trying to read my Bible or which is why I also have many now. But yeah, let's get into it. Guys, enjoy. We have a ton of different characters that we got to get through, so I think the line is pretty long. And I do have a lot of videos specifically for characters. So, like I said earlier, if I were to go into power scaling character and name the specific reasoning why character A would be character G, then we would be here for, like 24 hours straight, just talking about every single placement on the tier. So I'm going to try and do it, but give you guys as much context and information as humanly possible. If you want more context or more information, check out the videos that I have on the channel. Some are like 20 to 30 minutes long. That's how much time it takes to properly explain scaling, abilities, skills, and powers of some of these characters. You have to understand that I can't literally explain everything and all the nuance. We are going to run into where one character counter another character and be lower on the tier list. We're operating under the assumption that the higher the character is, that they should consider the below them. Not necessarily that they would 100% of the time be every character below them, and characters within the same tier, and even one tier are hard to say. These are going to be disagree with someone that goes to someone else. You can make arguments for either character. So let's get started. At the very top, we're going to put Kang. I mean, this is in the universe, and in the universe, Kang literally controls the sacred timeline. How does he use Dormammu? Well, have you seen Doctor Strange? He has Doctor Strange's like standard equipment. So within the universe, Kang obviously controls everything that goes on. So I don't think that's going to there's a lot of arguing going on there. And we're going to just go through this tier list as characters. So we're going to just start from the character on the left and then just go all the way to the bottom. If you guys have any comments on Kang.
I think the one that's shocking about Kang is, where it is personality. My prediction is when Loki and Civil War going up to Kang, he was trying to do this, he was like, hey, I could just give you guys the timeline where you beat Thanos and, you guys can all hang out and just have it all. So I think that goes to show sort of, like, imagine that in a versus scenario. So you just manufacture a timeline trying to beat whoever he's talking to and acting with his from his position. Just happens so that the guy could send some guys so they never existed. That's sort of the utility of Kang, where he's actually far beyond just a guy.
Yeah, and of course Kang ended up, dying, but could have easily prevented that if he, chose to do so. He essentially allowed Sylvie and Loki to find him out and get to the end of time because he was tired of his job. If he wasn't tired of his job, of course he could literally rewrite the timeline to do anything that he wanted.
Oh, come on.
So yeah, I think Kang in the universe, of course, out of the context. So let's move on here to Odin. I think it's pretty universally accepted that Odin is a high-tier character, and we're going to have him in Elite Avenger. We'll get into more context, I think, as we move along to add more characters. Right now, it's not really much on the head. This is where I have to place. Hela, I think another really easy placement. Of course, Odin beat her twice. Odin should be significantly above her, so one tier above, I think, is good for our placement here. Gilgamesh, I'm going to also put him in a high tier god, and we'll talk about him more as we move along. Again, as we add more characters, I think things will become much more clear as to why these characters are where they are. Endgame Scarlet Witch, we also have in Elite Avenger. Again, characters that are going to be right next to each other, and Wanda and Odin are right next to each other on the tier list, are contentious placements. If you think Wanda beats Odin, that's fine. I personally think Odin has more than enough hacks and power to beat Scarlet Witch from Endgame. And again, this is specifically Scarlet Witch from Endgame. We have multiple versions of different characters on here. Odin has things such as mind manipulation, power nullification. He can manipulate matter through the Odin Force. We see that in the Lord of the Dark World. Of course, he's extremely powerful. He's strong enough to beat Surtur with his eternal flame. Surtur obviously is miles above someone like Hela, who is above someone like Awakened Thor. So obviously Odin is extremely powerful just from a scaling perspective, but I think he also has a lot of tax abilities that make him a very dangerous threat. Compared to Endgame Wanda, is not nearly as powerful as she becomes later. So that's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but there's another version of Wanda on the tier list, and that is for a specific reason. I guess next up we have three Lokis. We're going to put Loki in God tier, and again we'll add more context when we're finally making comparisons between the characters. The three Lokis, I think, are going to be an extremely difficult case to consistently have somewhere on the tier list. Honestly, they could go into hard to scale, but I think, realistically, they're going to be somewhere around this level. Abomination. This is Abomination, of course, from Shang-Chi, and this version of Abomination does have scaling, and we'll get into that again once we start battling with it. Right now we're kind of just, getting the skeleton of the tier list. We'll start battling. That's what we're doing. Curse, we're going to put Avenger as well. Obsidian, also going Rocket Raccoon, low tier god. Rocket is a character we're going to probably have to spend a good amount of time on, or at least a little bit more than usual. I think for the most part, the Guardians of the Galaxy is downplayed, but especially Rocket Raccoon and Scarlet Witch. The Soldier, Falcon, Arishem. Since we have them up there, let's just go ahead and move them on to chat room was
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I guess I should have brought up when Curse was moved on to the tier list, but like I said, the nuance of Loki is, there's a lot to go into. But as Chad pointed out, specifically, Loki beat Curse, like we saw it on screen. There's no reason to think that Curse would ever beat Loki, or could ever beat Loki. He uses, of course, his own black hole grenade to beat Curse, but Curse has that as standard equipment to beat Curse. So yes, Curse is stronger, but again, you gotta find the right time to win the fight. Punch somebody or so, making arguments for Curse being Loki is not a no. Up next we have Awakened Thor, and he is going into high tier list. I don't know that Thor is much stronger than Avatar. That's sort of the whole point of the movie. Power and realizing that his power doesn't come from Mjolnir, but from his ties, and now he's able to more purposefully wield his lightning in exciting ways, and obviously he becomes more physically stronger after becoming a Loki. This in the Hulk fight, where he was able to just blast Hulk across the arena, where he wasn't able to do that previously. After he begins to awaken his powers, he sees Vision and his father, and then finally at the end of the movie, he gets to sit down with those and have that little chat. Much more powerful. Now, if we're talking about Thor in relation to Loki, again, we're getting into a situation where Loki's magical prowess has increased exponentially during the Loki show. I would never have Loki fight Thor prior to Loki coming out, but now that we know that Loki has mind hacks abilities where he's able to control materials of being like Goliath, front range, pretty much instantly. Of course, it's going to get Sylvie to do so, but I wouldn't think that Thor has any sort of real mind hacks resistance within the verse. He's able to kind of shrug off Wanda's mind hacks for a second during Age of Ultron, but Loki should, at this point, easily be able to enchant Thor from distance. So I don't really think that there's a chance for Ragnarok or Loki. And again, like I said, it really comes down to how you want to argue the Lokis. I think the enchantment magic is extremely overpowered. I think it's extremely broken and makes Loki particularly too powerful. How that new power will work within the narrative of Loki Season 2 or wherever Loki shows up next, I'm sure we'll see him have another interaction with Thor at some point. That all remains to be seen. But from a power scaling perspective, I think Loki consistently being able to enchant other people and someone that doesn't really have mind hacks resistance like Thor And we're going to get into the Eternals. I see people crying already in the chat. Don't worry, we'll get into why the Eternals are so high. If you watch my Avengers versus Eternals video, then I guess you already know that. Or if you understand the context of the film and the beats that we already know about the characters, you would understand why they were so high. But don't worry, we're going to get into it. So just, hold your horses, I guess. Let's start putting some more characters on the tier list before we dive into too much explanation. We have Black Panther here, fancy suit, into your Avenger tier. Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is going into Super Soldier tier. We're going to talk about Winter Soldier. Don't worry about it. Scarlet Witch. Extremely powerful, of course. We're going to put her in Celestial tier. The reason she's in the Celestial tier, the reason she is above Airship, again, when all characters are within the same tier, I think it's contentious. I don't think there's any reason that, why Wanda wouldn't be able to reality warp a Celestial. Based on what we've seen, you could say, sure, Airship could, do any number of things in order to blow her up. I think it really just comes down to who acts first, which is why the characters are sort of relative. There's that reasoning. Also, she has the Darkhold now. She should be far, far more powerful. I think we're going to consider that power in Multiverse of Madness. But if you guys aren't aware, the Darkhold literally has infinite knowledge in it. That Scarlet Witch can study the Darkhold independently of her body. So she, I would assume, has just been spending all of her time doing that in her astral form, as her body does X, Y, and Z. But yeah, I think the arguments for Wanda beating Celestials can be made. Regardless of that point, I think she would be a tier above her previous self, and also a tier above Odin, just based on her new ability that she gains within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, specifically in the WandaVision. I think the character is utterly and entirely broken, and of course I do have a entire 20-30 video on Scarlet Witch if you want more detail on that. Right, and I guess we should clarify again, even though I said this at the beginning, there's a lot of people that are joining now, and a lot of people that may be misunderstanding. So we're talking about who would win in a fight, not necessarily who's the strongest. Scarlet Witch, I'm not saying is as strong as the Celestial. At this point, I don't think that's even arguable. But if we're talking about the hack abilities, the ability to work reality itself is an extremely powerful ability. So that's what we're taking into consideration here, not necessarily, Airshim's ability to create and destroy planetary bodies such as stars. I don't think Wanda can do that, and I wouldn't make that assumption. We're talking about Hack's abilities, so you guys have to keep that in mind. When I'm talking about Hack's abilities, I'm talking about something that's not pure attack power or destructive capacity. The ability to enchant someone's mind, as Loki, the ability to warp reality, as Wanda can do with a simple touch. Shouldn't be understated at any point. So let's keep Hack's abilities in mind when we're talking about this. There's going to be a lot of characters that are pretty high on the tier list that do have different Hack's abilities.
I would also like to say, based on all of the comments in the live chat, and most likely comments that might arrive when this is uploaded as a public video, is it's your games. Don't take them seriously. Like if someone's putting Universal, that probably does not mean they can blow up the universe. So just keep that in mind. All that really matters is how high or low characters are placed relative to one another. That's really all that matters. Obviously, an example that Derek just gave is the fact that Wanda can't blow up a star or create a star, but she could reality warp Arishem into who knows what. She can make Agatha into just some random civilian who doesn't know anything about the power. So anybody who I see someone saying Scarlet Witch is town level or etc. That doesn't really matter because of reality warping. So that's kind of an ability that has nothing to do with your ability. Arishem ability in this case. So and then anybody who's talking about this character can blow up the universe, or this character that is put in Universal can't blow up the universe, or this character's a god, so there should be a god here. Don't get too hung up on that. That's not really what those mean.
Yeah, they're just fun names.
They're just fun names. So and anybody in the comments, if anyone comes in later, just correct them as well.
Chad, you can hop in. You wanted to say something about Awakened Doors placement.
Yeah, man. Like, the floor, back one, right? Or, there was so many, protective power. Like, the protective power pretty different. We just have to place. We have pre-awakened floor, so anytime floor has to be on there before obviously end game. We have the book floor, as you see there, in it from when you fully awakened powers, or you get although it's on there.
The God of Thunder is a founding Avenger and one of the most physically powerful beings in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Today we will be discussing Thor's incredible strength, speed, durability, and all the other powers the Norse god has. As with all of our Marvel Cinematic Universe power scaling videos, I will only be covering the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of the character. That means no comic book beefs unless they are canon to this version of Thor. Additionally, I will be focusing mostly on Awakened Thor, which is after Thor awakened his true powers in Ragnarok. We'll still be referencing some feats prior to this, but it's sort of like power scaling Iron Man. If you're really going to talk about him, you're not going to be discussing the Iron Man Mark I suit that he made in the cave, and you're talking about how powerful he is during Endgame. So with all of that being said, let's begin. When battling the Hulk during his time as a slave of the Grandmaster, Thor begins to awaken his full power, and even before this, Thor is able to send Hulk flying across the arena, and after seeing visions of Odin and beginning to awaken his powers, he takes complete control of the fight, hitting Hulk with punches he simply had not seen before. The other gladiators, the crowd, and even the Grand Master had thought such a feat was impossible. After all, the Hulk had been champion on Sakaar for a significant amount of time, although this amount of time is unknown, as time works a bit differently on Sakaar than it does everywhere else. It seems to be variable, changing from moment to moment, so while Hulk was there for a few years measuring by Earth time, he could have been on Sakaar for decades or even centuries, becoming more and more powerful and more skilled. After all, he trained directly with Valkyrie, who was one of Asgard's deadliest warriors. Thor, after becoming awakened, was not only able to flatten Hulk, but it is stated in the MCU Visual Dictionary that he was on the verge of winning, implying that he would be the victor, and the Grandmaster thought the same, as he felt it was necessary to step in and stop Thor before he could claim victory. While the final result of Hulk and Thor's battle is certainly debatable, it is interesting to note that an official source states that Thor was on the verge of winning. This doesn't necessarily mean that Thor certainly would have won, but this was a beatdown Hulk had never really experienced up until this point. And after fully awakening his power, he's able to fight more on par with characters like Hela. He's also able to completely shatter a portion of the Rainbow Bridge without much effort. For comparison, it took nearly a dozen Mjolnir strikes during Loki's insurrection to break the Rainbow Bridge, making his lightning strikes during Ragnarok at least 10 times more powerful than his hammer strikes pre-awakening. However, after receiving Stormbreaker from Eitri, Thor becomes even more dangerous. Stormbreaker is a king's weapon, meant to be the greatest on Asgard, putting it above the likes of Mjolnir, which when in Captain America's hands could damage Thanos' armor. And it's also above Gungnir, which Odin wielded against the Demon King Surtur, his daughter Hela, and the weapon could even kill Laufey, a character who could harm the Allfather. So Stormbreaker is no joke, that much we understand, but how powerful is Thor with this godlike weapon? Well, with it, he is able to cut through an entire concentrated beam from the Infinity Gauntlet. It is a universal level attack. As Thanos claimed in Endgame, he could rip apart the universe down to its atoms. So, if you don't want to say the blast is universal, it's at the very least planetary. After all, we've seen the Power Stone alone tear apart a moon which took 863.5 exatons at a low end and over 11 zetatons at a high end. Not to mention, Isan the Searcher was able to destroy the surface of a planet which is calced at over 5 ninotons. Both calcs putting the Power Stone alone at planetary. But if you add in other stones, such as the Space Stone, which contains the potential energy to wipe out the planet, and the Mind Stone, which contains more power than Ultron's life-wiping meteor, the gauntlet should easily be outputting more than planet-busting power. And Thor, using Stormbreaker, slices right through it like a hot knife through butter. So by that logic, Thor should obviously scale above planetary with Stormbreaker, right? Well, unfortunately, no. It's been confirmed by the screenwriters of Infinity War, Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus, that Thor was able to cut through the Infinity Gauntlet's beams because Eitri made both Stormbreaker and the Infinity Gauntlet, and he used Dwarven magic to give Stormbreaker the ability to counter the Gauntlet specifically.
I imagine it might have something to do with the fact that the same guy made both of them. It's Dwarven.
Yeah,
Dwarven?
Eitri has what he likes or what he likes.
And the Russos flat out state that Stormbreaker has the ability to counteract the powers of the Infinity Gauntlet.
It certainly has the ability to counteract the powers of the Gauntlet. And Eitri made both. I remember that.
Also, Thanos didn't know what was coming at him or how powerful it was. So being caught off guard, he just fired a massive beam at Thor.
I think that key moment, though, is this: Thanos was caught off guard. He literally didn't know the power of what was coming at him. I mean, maybe he could have used the stones to, in another way, had he understood what that weapon was, but it came out of nowhere.
If he had known what was coming at him, he could have used the Space Stone to teleport Stormbreaker anywhere in the galaxy. He could have possibly used the Reality Stone to warp the mighty weapon into something harmless, as long as Eitri's magic didn't nullify that ability. Thanos could have also used the Time Stone to simply stop Thor and the axe mid-flight, or he could have used the Mind Stone to control Thor's mind to have him call Stormbreaker back or do any other number of things. So some of you might be a bit disappointed to hear this, but don't worry, this is still a very notable feat, as Thor was able to pierce Thanos with Stormbreaker, and Thanos is very, very durable. Thanos is able to shrug off attacks from an enraged Hulk without using the Power Stone. He's able to crush the Tesseract in his bare hands, a feat which requires 56.2 teratons per second to do. If you remember back in the Avengers, Bruce Banner states that Loki has got to heat the cube to 120 million Kelvin just to break through the Coulomb barrier. The Coulomb barrier is the energy barrier that two nuclei need to overcome so that they can get close enough to undergo a nuclear reaction. And his hand would need to scale in durability to the force Thanos is applying to the Tesseract, which is 1,000,000 times more powerful than the Tsar Bomb, the most powerful nuke ever set off by the human race. Also, Thanos was able to endure 2 snaps from the Infinity Gauntlet, which at a minimum put out 5 gigatons of force. But from what we see in Endgame, that number is continuing to climb before Rocket closes the projection. So the final number is unknown at this point. But because Thor was able to pierce Thanos and then cut off his arm as well as his head with Stormbreaker, Thor, with the weapon, should easily scale above these numbers, making him island level at a low end and country level at a high end. For even more consistency, Thor was able to move Nidavelir's rings, which according to visual effects supervisor Greg Steele, are the size of a small moon, and when calculated, puts Thor's strength into the large island, the small country, range yet again. So, pretty consistent for the son of Odin. But in Endgame, Thor becomes even more powerful. He's blatantly just stated to be more powerful by the directors, and some of you may be thinking, well, he's fat in Endgame, shouldn't he be weaker? Well, I don't think that really follows. First of all, he's an Asgardian, not a human, so we can't really make definitive statements like Thor is fat now, so he should be slower and weaker. I mean, take a look at Odin. He was old as hell and still easily the most powerful Asgardian while he was alive. Additionally, Volstagg was unaffected by his hefty size, so why would Thor be? And during the final fight with Thanos, Thor was inadvertently able to knock out Iron Man, while Iron Man was in his most powerful suit yet. If you remember in Infinity War, Thanos was hitting Iron Man in the head with massive punches that Iron Man was able to power through. But in Endgame, using a combination of Stormbreaker and Mjolnir, Thor knocks out Iron Man with just one attack. And as for durability, Thor is just as beefy. During his battle with the Hulk in the Grandmaster's arena, Thor is able to take multiple punches from Hulk, a beating fit for a god, and it doesn't do much to him physically. He doesn't even bleed. He was hit with a flurry of 14 to 15 overhand strikes, punches, and shows no visible damage. Compare this to the fight with a weaker Hulk during the first Avengers, where Hulk was able to make God bleed with far fewer strikes. But we all know his best durability feat, tanking, which unfortunately doesn't make him star level. So let's all just calm down a little bit. I will explain. I'm not trying to downplay Thor here at all. So the act of creating or destroying a star is not the same amount of energy that star can output. In fact, the amount of energy isn't really anywhere close to star level. The total amount of energy that Thor was enduring per second is roughly 855 gigatons of force, or roughly large island level. Because Thor was tanking this amount of energy for so long, it's not a stretch to upgrade this durability slightly to at least small country level, which is still in line with one of Thanos' best calculable strength feats, which was, of course, casually crushing the Tesseract, which again makes Thor's strength and durability very, very consistent. And now we've come to the dreaded speed of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is pretty wildly inconsistent for the most part, but I think luckily that Thor is pretty consistent from what we've seen. So, during the events of Ultron's attempted destruction of the human race, the Avengers battle against the homicidal robot and his allies, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. During this fight, Quicksilver is zipping around, and the majority of his opponents are being perceived as motionless to Quicksilver, except for Thor. Quicksilver in Age of Ultron can move at speeds up to Mach 134.9, making him massively hypersonic. Additionally, Thor can throw and recall his weapon of choice at speeds exceeding Mach 1000 as shown during the Convergence. Thor is even able to see and track Quicksilver while he's running at super speed, as Thor throws his hammer at Quicksilver after Quicksilver punched Captain America in the face, showing that Thor is able to keep up with massively hypersonic Quicksilver somewhat. While Quicksilver did perceive Thor's thrown hammer as moving slightly slower than him, we do know that these characters have become more powerful and faster as the verse has progressed. Thanos is also able to react to Thor swinging, throwing, tossing, and attacking him with his weapons, and Thor is able to react to Thanos doing the same. So the speed for this part of the MCU that I feel is most consistent is around massively hypersonic plus, for the characters who scale to Thor and Thanos. And now that we've discussed Thor's stats, let's talk about being the god of thunder comes with some great perks. First is his ability to control the weather. Thor can create massive storms, which is no small feat. The ability to move clouds like this is very impressive, especially in the amount of time that he takes to do so. During Loki's invasion, he summons massive storms on multiple occasions. During the Battle of Wakanda, he conjures another, which is calculated at 2,156,150 tons, or small city level, and in Endgame, he summons his most powerful storm yet, which comes in at mountain level. Not to mention that Thor typically needed to charge up with Mjolnir to create really large storms early on, but by Endgame, he's doing it pretty casually. So there's no telling how massive a storm he could create by really trying. He can also create tornadoes, as he does during Loki's insurrection. He has the ability to control rain and can cause it to start and stop at will. He is stated in one source to cause earthquakes, and of course he has complete control over lightning. Before awakening his full power, he typically used Mjolnir to harness his abilities, as I mentioned before, conjuring storms and summoning lightning with his mighty hammer, and using it to fire concentrated blasts of lightning at his enemies. But after awakening, he gained complete control over lightning. He can absorb it into his body and expel it at will in large areas of effect blasts, concentrated beams, or he can create a lightning cloak of armor. In this form, he's able to enhance his strikes with lightning, as he does against the Hulk and against Hela's army, and he can even destroy Hela's necroswords with it. He also uses his lightning to draw enemies in closer and then toss them away. With his lightning, he's helped melt Ultron's vibranium hull, destroyed multiple Leviathans, broke apart the Reality Stone, but just as a reminder, breaking apart the Reality Stone does not scale Thor to the Reality Stone, so let's just drop that right now. During Ragnarok, Thor blasted Hela with a strike so powerful, it took a bit of time for the immortal goddess to recover. And while Thor can now use his lightning without a conduit, he's much stronger with a godlike weapon. Before Mjolnir was destroyed by Hela, he used it to fly great distances, and it was an integral part of his fighting style, using it to toss at enemies and recall at will. Thor could also change the trajectory of Mjolnir's path mid-flight, as he does against Surtur's minions. When spinning the hammer at incredible speeds, he could essentially use Mjolnir as a shield, protecting him from Surtur's flamethrower attack. And while Mjolnir is cool and all, Stormbreaker is another beast entirely. As mentioned before, Stormbreaker is a king's weapon, meant to be the strongest on Asgard. With it, he is able to summon the Bifrost, something Mjolnir was not capable of. And of course, Stormbreaker can tear through Thanos pretty easily. Both of Thor's weapons contain magical properties as well. Mjolnir was enchanted by Odin, so only the worthy could wield it, and Eitri enchanted Stormbreaker to counter the Infinity Gauntlet. Additionally, both weapons have healing properties.
Mjolnir healed Thor when the Destroyer invaded Earth, and Stormbreaker healed him after he held the Rings of Nidavellir open. The Russos go on to confirm that the healing powers are unique to Asgardians only, so not just anyone could be healed by the weapons of Asgard. And while Stormbreaker doesn't have the same worthy enchantment as Mjolnir, it cannot be wielded by a mere mortal. Simply picking up the weapon would shatter the minds of the weak and crumble their bodies, which I suppose would give Thor and those who wield Stormbreaker, like enhanced Captain America and Thanos, some sort of mind-hacked resistance, which seems to be pretty consistent, as Thanos.
Hoover. Hey, Hoover. What's wrong? What do you want? What do you want? What's wrong?